Hey guys, you're listening to episode 131 of the Finish Line podcast, where we discuss the intersection of faith, generosity, and personal finance. My name is Keelan, and I'm here with my co-host and brother Cody. Today we're talking to Drew Formsma, a prominent voice for generosity among Gen Z. At an age when many are still discovering their path, Drew is already a seasoned speaker and author of Everyday Generosity, using his unique perspective to empower his generation to give freely and live with purpose. Drew is the CMO of I Like Giving and is particularly involved in the more recent introductions of Generous Family and Generous Classroom, including the Generous Kids Book Club. Stay tuned to hear all he had to share. Before we get there, this podcast has grown almost exclusively by word of mouth. For those of you who have helped get the message out there by sending a link to a friend or sharing on social media, we just want to say thanks. It really makes an impact. If you think this or any of our other conversations are thought-provoking or inspiring, take a moment to share it with someone. We have been blown away at how God has used some of these stories to make a radical impact in the world of generosity and missions. And you can be a link in that chain. All right, let's get to the interview. All right, we're here today with Drew Formsma from I Like Giving. Drew, thanks so much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be on here with you guys.
So why don't you just kick us off telling us a little bit about yourself, maybe some of your stories, some of your faith background?
Sure. Well, it's great to be on here today chatting with you guys. My story is unique, very different than most. I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we lived in Ada, Michigan, home of Amway. And it was a quiet, quaint town. And deep down in those early years, I felt a calling that God had on my life. I knew there was something large. I would look out the window and watch the snowplower come around our driveway. And I just sat there knowing that God had something big in play. I knew there was something happening and he was preparing the way for me and our family. And that journey for us really, it was different. I think many kids my age were in school doing all sorts of things, studying for tests, sports, and that I did as well. But we moved to California when I was 12 years old, and everything started to change a little bit. See, my dad started an organization called I Like Giving, which started in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which was a story where we simply saw a family who had their bike stolen, and we went and bought them bikes. And it started a whole movement where we started to see people go create their own stories of generosity. And we began getting those on film, and millions of people around the globe, I think 195 million have seen them around the globe today. And it started this idea that what if our lives were more than just giving financially? What if it was this perspective where we can give with our thoughts, our words, our time, our influence, our attention, our money, and belongings? So this framework, my dad's grandpa really taught him, and those principles were passed down to me, not as much as a conversation around the dinner table, but by watching my parents' actions. I would watch them interact with people, be generous with their influence, help someone get somewhere they couldn't get on their own. All of these things started to happen. And while this was going on, my dad would often ask my siblings, hey, do you guys want to come along? As I Like Giving was growing, do you guys want to come along with me to different conferences? And my brother's like, no, I don't really want to. And my sister was too young, but I said, Dad, sure. This would be fun. I just want to be in the room. And there is a really legendary man named Stanley Tam in Lima, Ohio. And one of my first times ever traveling with my dad, there was this boardroom full of business leaders. And there was no space at the table for me, but I ate beef jerky sticks off to the side. And at the age of 13, for the first time, I felt like this is where I want to be. I think God's called me to be here, and I want to make a difference. I think so many times we're called to ministry, but I think everybody has a corner that God has placed in their life. Now, this could be someone who is washing cars at the car wash. This could be the mailman. This could be the president of the United States. We all have our corners and spheres of influence on how God wants to use us. And I was starting to feel like my corner was in business. And from an early age, I started speaking with my dad, traveling around the country. We moved to California. And between 2016 and 2020, we spoke at probably 125 churches. It was wild. And I got a really good taste of what is the climate like in America, in the church, in the generosity space? Why are people not giving? And why does it not stick? And I started to recognize a lot of patterns. And I think we're going to talk about those today. And we're going to talk a little bit more about where I like giving is today. But God really got my heart at a young age, 8 years old, got my heart. And I've been just on fire for him and pursuing him as every day. And, I think as my influence has grown, I've had to watch my quiet time with him grow in proportion to that. I think it's so important. I'm not 14 anymore. God has given me more opportunity and I want to steward that opportunity well. But I think I've noticed spending time with him, that's all that matters. All of the good activity I could be doing in the world doesn't really matter if my time with him, he is everything. My relationship with him, the love that I feel from him, I don't need anybody else, or he doesn't really need me to be doing what I'm doing. He's using me, but he doesn't need me, and he doesn't need my name to be out there. And God put me on platforms at an early age, and at the age of 20, COVID hit, pulled it all back. And I would say my impact, even though I've spoken in front of hundreds of thousands of people, done multiple TED Talks, been on all the big stages, I've been able to do more impact behind the scenes than I ever could have on the front of a stage. So that's where I am today. To give everybody a little teaser, this is going to be fun.
Drew, I want to come back to these family values that have been passed down in your family about different expressions of generosity. And I think there's a temptation to define generosity in terms of a financial context because it's easy to measure. It's much easier to measure than some of these other categories that you've listed. Can you share some of the non-financial expressions of generosity and how those have shown up from your perspective?
Yeah, so we look at, let's just kind of slowly walk through them because they're so important. And there are more than 7 ways to be generous, of course. But let's start with our thoughts. Generosity begins in the mind. It's choosing to think well of others, to assume the best, and to focus on, who we can be a blessing to. I think a lot of times negativity, a lot of things start in the brain. Our actions start in our mind and our heart. So if we can take our thoughts captive and begin assuming the best of someone, thinking the best about them. I recently support somebody financially, and it was a minister who travels around and evangelizes. And he didn't thank me for a gift that I gave, a year-end gift I give every month, but I gave another year-end gift and I didn't hear anything. You're like, I hope it went through. I hope he got it. And I just texted him, hey man, could we catch up and talk? And I started to notice the devil kind of got in my head, right? Of, hey, he doesn't appreciate it. All these type of tapes start to play. And I just said, hey, could we have a conversation about this? I just wanted to share my feelings and thoughts. And it totally slipped him and he apologized. And I just said, this is how it made me feel, but no worries. Like, I don't want to let things slip. And I can see how thoughts quickly turn when we allow the devil to get in those, especially around generosity. The devil does not like generosity. He doesn't like this. And we have to watch our thoughts. So being generous with your thoughts is a really big one. Words have the power to bring life and death, to build or to break. But I think if we can choose to uplift others, encourage others, and inspire others with our words, there could be something powerful at hand. Obviously with our money, right? Where our treasure is, our heart is. And I believe that tithing is so important, but I also believe it's just the beginning. It's scratching the surface of this life that's truly life. I look at, of course, you could have your reoccurring giving, but I often meet people who have extreme amounts of wealth and they give large amounts of money, but oftentimes you can give without loving, but you can't love without giving. So this concept of I could write a check for $100,000 and my heart doesn't have to be any part of that, but it's very difficult to love someone without giving. So that is the concept that I really take into this principle of our finances is our hearts are connected to this. So if we can look for ways to be generous beyond just the church too, there are charities that I give to on a monthly basis as well. But then there's these daily opportunities. There are people all around us every day. And if we just become aware of these opportunities, it's amazing what starts to happen. And I challenge people, go buy someone's groceries in Walmart. See what happens. Ask God, give me an opportunity to buy someone's groceries. You will notice your heart starts to soften because it's the love language of Jesus. This is how our God was created. This is how we were created to live. You will experience new depths when you begin stepping into everyday opportunities. So that's being generous with our money. Our time, it's our most precious resource. We give it freely. We're telling others you matter when we give, right? And I love that aspect of being generous with our time, looking at all the hours we have in a week. How can we allocate time to invest in the next generation, invest in those who are coming behind us, invest in your kids or your grandkids, also our influence, right? Use your voice and your platform and your connections to help someone get somewhere they couldn't get on their own. Attention. We all have our phones and we have more things prying at our attention than ever before. And it's how do you give someone your full attention, fully present with them, not distracted or looking into the distance or who else is in the room that I could be talking to, being right there with the person you're in front of. And then last is sharing our belongings, right? Sharing what we have reflects that values matter over our possessions, right? We care more about other people than we truly care about our possessions. And I think asking God, hey, God, I really enjoy these pair of sneakers, but if you want me to give them away, I will. And that heart posture really takes away from this obligation of feeling like, man, I need to conserve. I need to keep everything for myself. And I think it often opens your heart posture to say, wow, there could be something here. And it allows your heart to be free from this consumeristic, just more satisfies. And you feel so good because everything is God's anyway. We just get to be a part of it. We get to be a steward of it. And I think life is like this. It's like a river. It's meant to keep on moving. Everything that God's given us, we're supposed to keep passing it along. We're not supposed to hoard it or store up. We're supposed to keep moving. It's the bloodline that we get to live by. It's this true life that just, man, it's changed my life so much. And I know it's changed so many people. I know you guys have seen and experienced this type of impact.
So much to unpack there in what you just shared. In that quote that you made about love and giving together, that you can give without loving, but you can't love without giving, it reminds me of 1 Corinthians 13, earlier than the section everybody knows, where it says, if I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but I have not love, then I gain nothing. And that's exactly what you're talking about here. You can make huge actions of giving, but if your heart's not in it, then you really miss most of the point. And one of the things that I love about all the different expressions of generosity that you're just talking about is that it really requires a heart posture of generosity to overflow into all those different areas. It's pretty common in the giving space for people to just want a number, right? They're like, what do I need to do to meet my giving checkbox to know I'm on good terms with God? And everything that you're describing just tears all of that down. There's no checkbox that gets you to what you're talking about. It starts inside and just overflows in all these different areas.
Yeah, as you pursue growth in those different areas, the one that stuck out to me was what you're talking about, being generous with your possessions. If you're pursuing, how do I become more generous in these areas? A really easy test for that particular area is if somebody asks to borrow something from me, would I hesitate?
Oh, sure. It's really easy when someone says, the neighbor comes over, knocks on the door. Hey, can I get a few eggs for the cookies I'm baking? But then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, that person comes over and says, my car broke down. I noticed you had a third extra. Could I use it to go to work this week? It just gets a little bit, we notice our hearts it depends on what it is. It causes us to think and process differently, and I think no matter what we have, we should open our hands to it. It's so funny. I read scripture over and over and over again, especially in the New Testament, and it always finishes with this concept of love. It always finishes with this concept of giving. And we all know the verse, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. John 3:16. It's been plastered all over. Tim Tebow, he's got it under his eyes. We've seen it everywhere. And I think what's happened is we've seen it so much that I think we've missed the concept that is actually so powerful in this verse. What it's talking about, I'm wearing a hat for those that can't see. It says love gives. This concept, I've for many years have been in the generosity conversation for so long. I've been diving into this topic. I wrote a book when I was 16 called Everyday Generosity, Becoming a Generous Family in a Selfie World. I've studied this day in, day out. I've watched people interact and see life change among kids and families. And I notice what it is. My generation is deeply looking for an encounter of the love of Jesus. We know a lot about Jesus. We know the Bible stories of Jesus. We know Noah's Ark. We know all these fun stories, but we've never encountered his love. And what does he say his love is? It is generosity. See, I think the fun part about is love, it's an action. It needs to take a step. If I said, I'm going to love you, how am I going to love you? It's through generosity. Generosity is the vehicle of love. I often say generosity is love with boots on. It gets dirty. It doesn't always go the way you want. It sometimes turns out, it got messy, or they didn't thank you the right way, or you felt jaded, or whatever it is. And I think what's so fun about it is if you look at Jesus's life, he was interruptible, and throughout his day, he took these moments to be generous. He would take, in a busy schedule, he was moving and grooving. He would take just a moment. He would get down and look at that person in their eyes and say, do you want to be healed? Take just a moment and get in their world. That's what generosity does. See, when you give in what I just explained, these 7 ways, the best way to say is it basically allows you to get right into that person's world. And I'll give you a really good example. I was in Dallas last week. And I prayed, I said, God, give me an opportunity to give. I want to do something today. And I often wake up and say, God, give me one of these 7 ways to give. And every time it happens, because this is how he works. He wants to participate in it with us. So I was walking and I was down by the convention center in Dallas. And I saw this real nice guy. He was picking trash out of a pond. And he worked as kind of a janitor, cleaning up the area. And he had this long stick. You know those fun sticks they have where they just pull it out? It's like, boom, grabber. So I thought, oh man, this is going to be fun. I had $20 in my pocket and I was with my buddy Gabe, and I walked over and I said, sir, do you think you could pick this up? And I dropped the $20 on the ground. And he turned around and he's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And I was like, no, that's for you, man. And instantly, in a second, I could feel the presence of God on this guy. I could feel it. He was overflowing with God's love. I didn't have to say anything. I could just feel it. So I said to him, man, when did God get your heart? And he said, it's funny you say that. My grandparents have been so formative in my experience with God. And every day I come out here, I use this as my evangelism ground. My corner is this corner in Dallas. God has put me here for 6 years, and every day I show up on time. I do my work to the best of my abilities. I'm never calling out sick. I want to show up, do my best, and the people love me. My coworkers like to be around me. And he said, that's because I'm doing this unto God. God gave me this corner, and this is the place I get to be in. And now today, what you just did for me, I do for other people in my job. So we had this conversation. I ended up asking him to pray over me because I was just so blown away by his presence. And I think what I took away from that conversation, we prayed with him and left, was he is doing what God has called him to do. And he's not only just praying about it, he's in his part of the world, impacting his area. And it was so influential on me because I noticed, man, we're all in this together. We're all parts of this body that have different corners of this world that we get to step into and make a difference in. Now, if we all participated in our own spheres of our lives in this way, what would happen? What would happen if everybody woke up and said, Lord, give me an opportunity today? Because what happens is there are many times I run into people who don't know Jesus. But what is the best way to evangelize? It's through generosity, because it opens the heart of someone to the love of your Creator. It says, come and see in the Bible. Come and see. Like, come and see what God has. And that's what you're doing with your giving. You're telling someone, come and see this presence that He has changed my life. And you're using what He called us to do is to love Him and to love others. And generosity is love. And it's rapidly changed my approach, because this goes way beyond. That story had nothing to do with how much should you give. Because Jesus didn't give 10% of His blood, did He? He gave everything. Now, we're supposed to give everything. This doesn't mean sell your house and everything. This is your life, saying, God, this is yours. This is your life. This is your calling. This is your business. This is your money. This is your family. How can I steward what you've given me well? Give me opportunities to recognize that it's not about Drew. It's not about Drew's platform. It's not about Drew's LinkedIn profile. It's not about his followers. It's not about all these things, because it doesn't matter. You read Ecclesiastes, none of this matters. Really, at the end of the day, He's called us to do two things, to love Him and to love others. So I see life as a gift, and that every day we get to wake up and pursue whatever God has given. Earl Nightingale is the best definition of success. It's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. See, that guy, he woke up and said, I'm going to be the best janitor on this corner. That's success. He is moving at success. See? And a lot of people, they'd say, oh, come on, what do you mean? That's not success. But he's finding success in it because he's on call for a different mission than what the world sees. So I'll spark the audience with this. I truly believe you can buy happiness. I think you can.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're probably wondering how. By giving it away. Not by writing checks and giving it away, but by connecting your heart and saying, Lord, I want to begin being a vessel in these 7 ways of generosity. Maybe you have been given resources. Have fun with it. Like, this is so fun. God has given you resources to go out and sprinkle what God is doing in other ministries around the world. You get to be a part of this greater mission. So I told that to a guy and he said, you really think that? And I said, well, you can do a test. You could get 10 $100 bills. I know you give hundreds of millions away. Take out 10 $100 bills and go into Walmart and pray and ask God for opportunities. And call me when you do that. He calls me back. He said, Drew, I've never experienced this type of generosity in my life. It's because what it is you're no longer giving down, you're giving across. And what's happening is you get to step into someone's life. You get to hear their story. People just want to be heard. People just want to be listened to. I mean, you would be blown away by the stories that you would hear. I bought a lady hair curlers at Walmart, $3.41. I said, why are you buying the curlers? She said, well, I just found out today that I'm cancer free. So it's like, boom, $3.41. I just stepped into a lady's life who was just blown away by my generosity. But we connected in a way that was so beautiful. It's a connection that goes beyond anything. It goes beyond wealth or race or background, or it is Jesus's bloodline. This is how he lived. And this is why people were so attracted to him, because generous people are attractive. And it's not about a perfectionistic getting it right every time. I miss opportunities every single day, and I'm far from getting this down. But I'll tell you, the life that's truly life is one that you hold your hands out and you say, Lord, everything is yours. I give this to you. I trust you. Generous people trust God. Generous people trust that no matter what the economy or the political setting looks like, God will provide. He's provided in the past and he'll provide in the future. Generous people have abundance mindsets. They're not worried and scarce. Our God's not scarce. He wants us to thrive. He wants us to go and just live with this. We live a short life. It's just a vapor. We live a very short life. And I think God gives us these daily opportunities. No matter what your job is, no matter what you're doing, you have daily opportunities to share the gospel through generosity. And it's what we're teaching kids across the globe. Because I think if we can get people to experience the love of Jesus, what's going to happen is a radical movement of God across the world.
Yeah, along those lines, I'm curious for your thoughts on Gen Z specifically, because I know that we've spoken to a number of people. I know there's a number of organizations out there that are very interested in trying to share a lot of what you're talking about with Gen Z in particular, the generation that's going to be taking everything over. And I think each generation is different along the way, and what resonates with one generation to another is very different. So, and you've spoken to a wide range of audiences. I'd be interested to know some of the barriers that you see, from Gen X, millennial generations in the business world or otherwise, and then also what you're seeing in Gen Z and how that compares, how maybe the strategy of that message changes a little bit.
Sure. I think Gen Z, I'm obviously biased because I'm in Gen Z, but I think it's one of the greatest generations that has ever happened. The innovation, the ideation, let's get to the bottom of things. Let's be authentic. The millennial generation and the ones ahead of us, a lot of it was like, okay, let's try to deal with what's going on. I think we're seeing through a lot of things. Our generation's seeing a lot of the gaps, that the stories that have been told for generations of just, this is the way it's been done and it will always be done this way. I think that thinking has gone out the door. And I think a lot of us are rethinking, what if it was different? Like, who wrote these rules? And let's look at, why is it the way it is? And thinking about that in the church setting, in the business setting, in the work setting. Now, are these things always good? Their structure is important. And the reason people have done things in the past, there are reasons behind some of it. But I'm so encouraged by Gen Z because I get to work with a lot of them. I get to work with a lot of really innovative, creative, on fire, authentic peers that have radically creative minds. And I think what I would encourage anyone is, if you're in an organization, I would invite the Generation Z to the front table of your board meetings. I would bring them to the front line of your church gatherings. I would bring them to the front line of your creative sessions, the worship, all of these areas, because I think oftentimes the next generation can get overlooked. We talk about including the next generation. Yes, let's disciple and include. But my opinion is, I feel like I get embraced by those who made a difference when they were a kid or they were my age. But I think sometimes I just get overlooked. What could this person possibly have? What do they know at 23, right? What could they possibly know? And I can tell you this, I don't know everything, but I do know a few things about technology. I do know a few things about innovation, AI. Things are changing like this. And it's important to be on the cutting edge of these. And I think even in the nonprofit space, I think the way we have done nonprofit has often been, let's fund nonprofits, but we want to see the impact. So impact investing is growing a lot, which is awesome. But I think getting organizations who can function like a business because they're bringing in money to help supplement the organization, right? It becomes efficient. So it's less focused on maybe a president's weekend around raising money or something like that. It's focused on, let's see if we can make this system work. Let's see if we can use real estate, use these other properties to do good. And I think we're seeing that across the board. Innovation is really occurring. I'm watching a lot of my peers who are doing radical things in all sorts of spaces, in the entertainment space and app design to nonprofits to business to real estate, all these areas. It's so cool to watch. I'm really bullish on Gen Z. And I would just say include them in and start having those conversations, because I think they could take a lot of advice from you and you could hear a new perspective on a lot of these new changing, evolving things. Things are rapidly changing, like at a speed that's so fast. I just finished college and it's like the college education, it's like it cannot keep up. I mean, by the time you put something in a textbook, it's already completely different.
It's really interesting hearing you kind of break down these dynamics, because I'm at the later end of the millennial generation. So I'm one of the youngest millennials. And it feels like just in the last few years, I kind of mentally went through the transition of like, I don't know anything. I don't have any experience. I don't know what I would have to share with someone younger than myself. And I'm the youngest of three brothers. So I've just always grown up with like, I'm always looking upward generationally to learn and to get more experience. But I am seeing what you're describing from Gen Z of people taking leadership roles. And I've been incredibly impressed just in the local church in this region, exactly what you're talking about playing out before my eyes. But Drew, you talked about the perspective you gained through these years of speaking to and at churches. What were some of your core findings from those experiences?
It was eye-opening to say the least. And I think the thing that I would take from it is, I think the concept, especially on this podcast, every weekend in the church, we have a commercial on generosity. So I think it's kind of like over and over and over again, we can kind of become numb to this concept. And it can be hard to understand that there is so much more we're called to. There's this greater life that we're called to. When we would speak at these churches, it was like opening the roof on the church because we would share these 7 ways of generosity. We would share these stories of just simple people doing extravagant generosity. Lives were being changed and people were rediscovering purpose and meaning in their life. And it had very little to do with money. People will begin giving more money if they can begin living generously in these other ways. That's what I think pastors are starting to discover. You can get someone to serve in the church. If you can get someone to help on the board or help in these other areas, they're going to begin giving financially as well. But I think even across the board is I see an authentic pursuit of the cross as something that is going to outbeat any stage or lights or fog machine or skinny jeans or Gucci belt. I truly believe, I think our generation is ready for the cross. We're ready for our focus and gaze to be on him. And it doesn't need to be a show. It doesn't need to be this big production. Let's just go back. I think it's so funny because everything happens in circles, right? But I think our generation's finally getting to the point where it's like, what if we just stripped it down and became authentic in his presence? We saw the Asbury revival, right? It was amazing. That was in a tiny little church. And God rapidly swept through that place. And lives were impacted. Happened on campuses across America. It had nothing to do with a major movement. It was just God wanted to move and it moved. And I think that is my finding is how do we go back to, yes, we want to have excellence. I'm a big excellence in the church person, excellence in the Christian world. I think it often lacks. And I don't like that. I want to be on the cutting edge. And it's amazing what's happening in the movie industry. And there's some radical stuff. Candace Cameron Bure just came out with a wonderful movie last year. She is always on the cutting edge too. And getting to work with her is fantastic on some of our kids' books. But it's growing. It's getting better. And I think overall I'm encouraged. And I'm a big collaborative impact person. I don't believe in competition. I believe that working together to achieve the goals together. One of my favorite people is Mark Green. He taught me this. He said, Drew, what you can do together, what they've done with Illuminations, they've taken all these Bible translation organizations, brought them together around one goal. Instead of everybody just going out and doing their own thing, they got focused together. And even though that was difficult and hard, they rubbed shoulders and went at it together. I think that concept is really fascinating. I think churches are going to begin doing that more. And there's a lot more commonalities between churches than I think things that separate them. And I'm excited to see what God says about it all in heaven. But I think we got to remember the cross and remember what Jesus did and God did with bringing his son. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're dead on there. And that distills it down in the most concise way possible of what's always going to be the most powerful motivator is when people really encounter Jesus. And I think that's been true of every generation. And I think just the context that it has had to happen in is what's different really with each generation. But that's always been what has motivated any major act, major movement or whatever. So I Like Giving has been around for a while now, you guys have gotten to see quite a bit as I Like Giving has grown, as a platform has grown. I'd love to hear, what does ministry look like now? Where are you guys looking and trying to share the message? Where is that message changing? Where do you see the opportunities?
I want to first just shout out my daddy. We have worked together since I was 14, and the unique ability that we've been able to work together, and it is one of the most incredible relationships. I mean, talk about an example of what God looks like. He's been pretty close to it, and I am just blessed. I mean, he has, from 14 years old, he said, Drew, you want to share a story from the church stage? I mean, imagine that. Your career, I could say anything. I step on that stage, and the first time I did, I was in a Tommy Bahama button down and some long shorts and flip flops. I mean, come on. And he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And that is one of the most generous things you can do. You know, he saw an ability to communicate, innovate. You know, we use strength finders, and he would pull these things out in me. You know, Drew, you're futuristic. You know, you have strong beliefs. You are an ideator. These things started to become, you're an activator. I started to see these things in myself. While at school, I was a B student. You know, I was starting to think I was just average. And my dad saw something in me. And what happened is he brought me around conversations really early on, always around conversations. So I basically got to start to working, I would say 10 years before a lot of my peers. So a lot of them are graduating college, getting their first jobs. And it's like, geez, I've been doing this 9.5 years, working with my dad. And I Like Giving has always said, we want to inspire the world to live generously. And we use stories to do it. And we have over 22 short films on generosity. I think there's a lot of generosity organizations that use them. I Like Being 98. I Like Adoption. I Like CAR. There are some really incredible stories that are being used by other organizations, but we always innovate. We want to continue to pivot. There's a great book called Who Moved My Cheese? And it talks about, you got to pivot. You got to move, or else you're going to become like Blockbuster and get swept away. So we are always trying to ask God, where do we want to go? Where do we want to do? And so we were on the Christian speaking circuit and really getting our message in so many places. And it was incredible ministry that we were doing. And right before COVID hit, we just looked at the pillars of society and said, what if we could impact families, businesses, and classrooms? So that's what we did. We got focused in on, we can impact parents and adults and grandparents all day long, but the best thing to do is get to the kids while they're young, before their morals and values are defined. Before the age of 10, Barna Research came out and said that is when their values are defined. So if we can get to them before then, where their hearts are open and their posture is ready, they haven't been offended by anybody's giving, they haven't been taken advantage of, they haven't had any poor experiences, you know, they don't have a stingy heart, they don't have a hard heart. Life hasn't gotten to them yet, you know? So if we can get to them when they're young, there's something powerful. And so we began a classroom initiative called Generous Classroom, where we are the first biblical SEL company, social emotional learning, where we're taking God's word, rooting it in these concepts, bringing it into Christian schools. We're in hundreds of Christian schools across America. We are hoping to get to thousands. We have over 50,000 students in the Philippines going through our curriculum right now. God is rapidly moving in the classroom because they're learning this daily, weekly, monthly, these same concepts that we are teaching to adults, bringing them down to the kids, using really incredible curriculum and content. We got the best experts in the space to build this out. It took many years to do. And now we're full throttle bringing this into the classroom. And the second is Generous Family. Generous Family, we have a kids book club with Candace Cameron Bure, where we have a new book that releases every single month focused on values that last, values that matter, like kindness and generosity and friendship and compassion and empathy. If we can teach kids the characteristics of Jesus without all of the agendas and mixed messaging, what could happen? It's these habitual things we're trying to get into families, right? It's not a once and done thing. You need to continue to refine it. It's like a muscle. We got to keep moving at it. So I get to work with Candace Cameron Bure, and last year we have thousands of families that are a part of our kids book club who get a new book every month. And we're partnering with organizations all over the country, getting this in churches, getting this in businesses, because something explosive is happening. Getting kids when they're young. And then also it goes off on the parents because the parents are reading it to them. So we just license our content to Southwest Airlines. So when you fly on there next, you can see our kids' books under the kids' entertainment section. And that's just radical because Christian things often stay in Christian places. And I want to get into the world. I believe that excellent content deserves a spot at the seat in society. And we want to be there. We want to represent Jesus to those who don't know him. And I told you at the beginning, the way to do it is through his love. And if you tell the story right, something magical can happen. And Jesus, he can work through just a small little animation. So we're really excited what's happening in Generous Family. And then Generous Business, we work with different businesses on bringing this message into the forefront of a culture, training employees that this concept can be taken into the work. It's generous not to hit send on that email, or it's what if we decide to affirm each other and call each other higher, and all of these concepts across the board, if it's families, classrooms, or business, they're the same. These principles are from the Bible, and we want to bring them to the forefront of our lives because this is what matters. And I think it's the greatest honor. I thank God every day. I wake up at night sometimes because I'm so excited for the next day. God is so good. And the fact that I was born into a family that gets to think about this mission and God has equipped me, it is such a blessing. It is such a blessing, and we're impacting millions of people's lives, but I have ambitious goals. We're going to go big, and I don't think God has small plans. Oral Roberts always said that. He said, make no small plans. So I liked that, So that's where we're at.
Drew, I want to dive into, you talked about generous classroom, generous families. Outside of the classroom, when the kids go back home, what advice do you have for parents who want to continue to cultivate a generous environment in the home? You obviously grew up in an environment like that, but what have you learned from your own experience, and what would you share with other people who want to supplement these kinds of materials and curriculum?
Sure. I think the first thing would be, first off, we have a lot of free resources. So if you're a mom and you have a homeschool kids, or you have kids that you're interested in, they're between the ages of 2 and 12, go check out our kids' books. Start integrating this content into your family because it's hard. Everybody wants to, I want to raise generous kids. I want to raise kind kids. How do you do that though? Right. And I believe modeling this type of lifestyle is the first place to start. Start doing this yourself. Get in, and your kids are watching everything they're doing. I watched my parents for many years do some radical stuff that sometimes I would just say, that's a little awkward, but they were just above and beyond. And it was not giving with strings attached. It was not paying it forward. I don't like pay it forward. I say give it forward. When you give, don't expect them to do anything. They can receive it well. Like I tell people, I'm like, just receive it. You don't have to do anything, it's good. God is good. I would say check out generousfamily.com for family resources. If your kids go to a Christian school, get that Christian school into a curriculum like this. We got to make sure that the actual curriculum, we spend a lot of time, getting the right buildings for these Christian schools, getting the kids in the seats, but now the curriculum's got to be right. And it's important to make sure we have a lens on that. And so we go above and beyond with parents. Every lesson that is taught inside a Christian school in our program, we send home parents exactly what's taught. Every video, every lesson, every learning objective, everything goes home. We want the parents to be aware of everything and cultivating these conversations around the dinner table, because this is how you create this ripple effect of impact. And so go to generousclassroom.com. There's plenty of free resources there, or generousfamily.com, where you can get family resources and some really practical, a little acronym for those listening that I will share is MEE. It's clever. It's an acronym. It should be better because it's not about me, but it's called me, MEE. First is model. Model generosity to your kids. Begin looking for ways to do this daily, weekly, monthly. Begin implementing these. Create opportunities for your kids. Encourage them is the next. Model, encourage, engage. Encourage your kids to be generous. Give them opportunities to step into. And then last is do it together. I think it's so fun to bring your kids around and say, hey, we want to be a part of doing something. My family, we always had a emergency giving fund. Now, this is not Dave Ramsey's emergency fund. This is Brad and Drew Formsma's emergency giving fund, which our family always knew that we could respond to opportunities that our family had. I remember as a kid, my brother had a friend who his dad was dying of cancer. And so we were able to buy new tires for that family in the winter season during a really hard time. That was money that we got to, as a family, decide to take from this giving fund. And I think just being practical with it, just talking to your kids like, man, we have an opportunity. There is a greater life. A smile goes a long way these days. My dad's just crazy. He'll go into the kitchen of a restaurant and he'll look at them in their eyes and say, thank you for what you do. You matter. And it's just amazing what a compliment, looking in someone's eyes, taking a moment to acknowledge someone. These are such simple things, but it just radically changes your perspective on life because we all are busy. We've got real busy lives. Everybody, we're doing a lot of good impact. But again, the Bible says we could be doing a whole lot, but if we don't choose to love each other, we will be accountable for everything that we do on this earth. God is going to turn on that remote and we're going to watch our lives back. And he's going to sit there and we're going to watch him work. And I would just say, wherever you're at, if you're 8 listening to this or you're 98, I would encourage you, live with the type of lifestyle where it's all about other people. Of course, you want to take care of yourself and make sure your family's good, but it is focused on the needs of others. It's taken that focus off of us and onto others. And Gen Z, that's the biggest thing that will be our hurdle is we're so focused on ourselves. We're focused on building our influence and building our resume and building our accolades and building all these things. But at the end of the day, Jesus is not interested. God's not interested in that. There's stories throughout the Bible. He's not interested about the amount. He's more interested on how we went about the things that we did in our life. I just want him to be proud of me. I want him to look back and say, Drew, you lived like I had called you to live. You shared the love that I shared when I was on that earth. You were a vessel. You were a representative of me. And I like I said, I'm so far from it, but I just know God's got my heart, especially more recently in the last couple of years where it's like, I'm not interested in being on any stages. I'm honored to be on this podcast, but I don't need to be affirmed by those around me. The love of Jesus fulfills me completely. And I don't need anything in terms of accolades and all of this because what he provides to us, and this is why the whole point of this that I'm getting at is if you can experience the love of Jesus, you will overflow with generosity. And we all know those people who it's like overflowing from them. You can just feel it on them. They have that giver's glow, right? It's like, wow, how do I get there? And what you notice about that person is they spend time with God and they live abundantly generous. It's incredible to see. And they love people so well.
Yeah, that's really the core of the Christian life, I think, summed up right there. But 100% where you are fulfilled and overflowing by Jesus alone, all this other stuff clicks into place. And really the fine details are not nearly as important as where the source is coming from. Going back just a little bit, you mentioned something when we were talking about families and churches and different stuff. And I like your MEE acronym. And I think one of the keys in there is example, because there's a lot of pastors who want a generous church. There's a lot of parents who want generous kids. And the answer is always going to be the same. You have to model it yourself in order for any real change to happen in those who are watching you. And it's true in the family. It's true in the church. And it's true in business and every other, sphere that we've talked about. I have to ask you, I Like Giving is big on stories, and you have probably heard hundreds or thousands in the time that you've, been working through all this. What is your favorite generosity story? Or if there's a couple, that's fine.
I always like to go to the recent ones because it's just fun to relive the recent ones. I don't know if this is necessarily my favorite, but it's the funniest. And I think the audience needs a good laugh today, right? It's just, we've gotten to 50. If you've gotten to 54 minutes in this episode, you win 3 stars. But this is the deal. I woke up, I live in Nashville, Tennessee now, beautiful city. It's growing like a weed. Everybody's moving there. But I woke up with some tailbone pain. Terrible, right? It's like, oh, guy, what do you do about that, right? Like, you got a butt problem. It's like, okay, what do I do? So you go to Google and you're just like, I can't believe we're here, right? This is ridiculous. I'm typing it in and I call in and this lady picks up and she says, actually, we can get you right in. I'm like, oh, fantastic. I mean, when was the last time you got right into a doctor? I mean, that's a miracle in itself. So I drive over Monday morning and I'm sitting in the lobby and filling out the documents and they call your name. Hey, Drew, come on back. And so I come on back and I'm sitting in this room and this lady comes in and she says, I'm going to do your blood pressure and all the things they do. And as soon as the door opened, I felt a ray of sunshine. I mean, it was like, boom. I mean, I was like, whoa, this is strange, right? I don't know the exact terminology. I think it's a colon and rectal doctor to be exact for the audience. But I was like, wow, there's something about her. And I said, I was having all these thoughts, poor me, I'm in pain, I've got a butt problem, all this stuff, right? And she walks in and she works at this type of doctor. So this is not that fun. And I just said, wait, what is it? I just stopped her and I said, you're beaming. Like, what's going on? Like, you're working here. And she said, well, every day I wake up, I look at myself and I say, thank you, God, that I'm here today. You gave me breath in my lungs and I'm blessed to wake up. God gave me another day. And I said, whoa, that's a perspective. I'm just like, holy cow, this is nuts. And I just asked her, I was like, do you follow Jesus? And she smiled even bigger and she said, I've experienced the love of Jesus and there's nothing greater. It carries into my job. I love what I do and I love that I get to help others. And I sat there and I was, the doctor came in and helped me with my issue. But I left that day and I was so radically moved by her expression of generosity. Because what she did didn't cost any money. It didn't cost her anything but changing her script in her mind, flipping the script on negativity, and choosing to look at life as a gift. There are a lot of really hard things going on in life, and people are going through a lot of circumstances. But choosing joy amidst pain. This wonderful nurse decided to choose joy every morning. And she decided to look at life with a grateful heart. And she steps into that work environment and gets to bless every person that walks in there. I mean, you're not walking in there feeling good. And I walked out feeling better. I mean, I was not only feeling better from the doctor, but I'm feeling better in life. I think this really awkward conversation that we just had about butts should lead people to think about this. If you're in a stinky situation of life, how you carry yourself and how you look at it, and even in gratitude, will radically help your heart, because this life is hard. There's a lot of hardships. And I just challenge each person, live with that type of lamp. It says in the Bible over and over, live with this type of lamp that just shines in this dark world. And that's what giving does. That's what this spirit does. You get to get filled up with your relationship with God, and then you get to go throughout your day and overflow with his presence to every person you meet. That is the abundant life. That is the generous life. That is choosing to love others. And it is so fulfilling. It is so fulfilling. It's better than any vacation to Cabo. It's better than anything you could ever do, because this is the kind of love that, I mean, it's amazing to think that somebody literally chose you. You know, it says in, I think it's Ephesians, it says, for his love is so deep, so wide, so long. And if you could just comprehend it, your life would be made complete. We have somebody that loves us that much. And out of love for him, we get to show love to other people. And it is a beautiful life we get to live. No matter what job, what age, what occupation, what passion, what calling, we all get to be a part of this great mission together. And it's fun.
Drew, I think what you're hitting on with that particular story is another iteration of the story you told earlier about the gentleman that you challenged to go to Walmart with $100 bills. And the way that he responded and said, I've never experienced generosity like this. Like, he had an experience in that as well. There was an inward and an outward impact going on through that experience. And you can choose to do that all the time. Wherever you are, waiting in line at the MVA or at the bank or somewhere you don't want to be, you can make a decision that impacts how you feel and how other people feel because you're there. And that is really, really cool. It broadens the perspective of generosity.
Because one thing is, because everybody has a platform. Everybody has a stage. You don't need to be put up on that stage at church or that conference for you to make an impact. Everybody has a stage. Every time you get in line, the person in front of you and behind you doesn't have to be paying for their meal. It could be talking to them, could be asking the Holy Spirit to lead you in these opportunities. I love to say that, because it's not us pursuing this. It's God using the Holy Spirit to guide us on this journey. And he will bring us people and opportunity. God loves to use his people to do his work.
Drew, what are you most excited about when you think about the next 5 or 10 years?
Oh man, I've never been more excited. I think the best is yet to come. I think there's a lot of fun things that could happen. I think there's a lot of innovation that's going to happen. I'm excited to see. I don't know. I think we're in some wild times. That's for sure. But I honestly think there's never been a better time to have kids. Have kids. Have a lot of them. Make an impact on their lives, invest in them, be vulnerable with them, be transparent with them. Vulnerability builds trust. My parents have told me some crazy stories about when they've gone wrong, right? And it just makes it more relatable, because life, we all are messing up and having pitfalls, right? And when we hear our parents, who we look up to, also went through some stuff, it's like, okay, well, we're all in this together. But I'm excited. I think I'm an optimist. I really am. But I believe that God has something in store for each person listening to this. I believe God has something powerful in store for every one of your lives. I think the best is yet to come for your families, for your lives, for your significance. I don't know how long God has me on this earth. I want to make sure I wake up and give everything I got to help move the needle and do everything I can to help be a part of this greater impact. But I'm optimistic. I can't be more excited. We have some really exciting things launching. But I love innovating. I think I'm a creative, innovative ideation. And over the last 9 years, I'm just blown away by, it's only a miracle, the stuff that we pull off. But everybody told us we couldn't do it. I mean, I've had so many people, Drew, it's not possible. You can't do a book a month. You can't do that. There's been a lot of people that say that. And I just love saying, all right. And then we do it. And it's all right. We're going to keep moving. I think there's a lot in store. I could not be more excited. And I would say, for all those that are, worried about what things are going on, and, there's conspiracies and things that people can get worried about, right? I would just say this: we know the end of the story. And so let's wake up every day and use our ways of generosity to display his love every single day. And when he comes back, you'll be completely great. And, some are saying we're close. Some are saying we're far. I don't know. All I know is I'm going to keep showing up every day and trying my best to love others and be creative and enjoy it. Ecclesiastes says enjoy it too. This life is meaningless, but enjoy the fruit, right? There's good things at store. So enjoy the fruit that God has given you. And I think anybody that has abundant wealth or any type of wealth, I would encourage you this. There are some really incredible opportunities across ministries that I interact with all the time. There are some really cool things happening in the space. And I would just say, get involved, be a part of it. And because where your money is, where your treasure is, your heart is. And let's connect to things that are doing good. And then for your own family, do it together and see what happens.
Yep. There are definitely some crazy things going on right now. And so I 100% echo that. As we get to the end of our time together, we like to end every episode with our Manager's Minute, just a practical action our listeners can take to step into their role as stewards and manage God's wealth wisely. So, Drew, do you have a suggestion for our listeners today?
I would encourage every person on here to push into the unknown, push into the creativity that God has given you. Even if all the things don't make sense, push forward. I think a lot of people's ideas get stuck in their head. And if God has given you an idea, it's yours to steward. Go after it. Start pushing towards it. And if you're not supposed to do it, God will shut it closed. But I think oftentimes people can get stuck in the ideation portion and they never move to activation. So I would say act on what God has called you to do. If you feel that idea is lingering in your head, or you're supposed to give in this certain capacity, or that ministry you're supposed to give a large amount of money to, do it. And I would just challenge you to start moving, because movement is where He can move you if you're moving. But it's real hard to knock on doors when you're not even standing in front of them. And so just stand in front of some doors. Let God begin to work in your life and enjoy it. All of this, I watch so many people, just the perspective that I've gotten to have is I get to be around a lot of people of influence or affluence. Many people will look at me and go, oh, I wish I was where you're at. And it's like, you wish you were where I was and you got everything. It's like we're never content. And so I would just say, just be grateful for what God has done in your life and the impact that you're making. And don't compare yourself to what other people are doing, and don't compare your giving to what other people are doing. God's got you on a journey. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. And I am far from figuring this out, but I just know this much. A generous life is a better life for me, and it's a better life for you. And it doesn't just have to happen on Thanksgiving and Christmas. You can do this daily, weekly, monthly.
Well, that is about as perfect of an ending as I can think of. Drew, thank you so much for being with us today. Where can people find more about you, about I Like Giving, and where can they get in touch?
Sure. ILikeGiving.com. You'll learn about our 3 initiatives. You can find our different websites, Generous Family and Generous Classroom, on there as well. And yeah, if you have a Christian school that you're connected to, would love for you to introduce them to what we're doing. And even if you have small kids, grandkids, getting some kids books and beginning teaching them these principles at a young age, it's powerful. I had this mom send in a note this morning, and she just shared how these principles have been impacting her kids in ways that she's never seen before. But she said, more importantly, I've noticed my own heart start to shift. And I think this is the fun part about kids books. Dr. Seuss once said, his kids books are for anybody ages 0 to 99. So if you're looking just to re-spark that childlike generosity, start with a kids book and see what happens.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Drew, for joining us. Really appreciate you giving us some of your time and just sharing some of your story, what God's doing.
What a fun time. You guys are great, and excited for all that's ahead with your organization and Finish Line.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the show, guys. If you want to find any references or links from today's show, you can always find them in our show notes at finishlinepledge.com/episode 131. Before we finish up, I have a quick question for you. Have you ever stopped to answer the question, how much is enough? A financial finish line is designed to help you do just that. Our 90-day Finish Line Pledge breaks down the process into 3 easy steps. Step 1, define how much is enough for you and your family to spend in a single month and use that as your monthly spending budget for 90 days. Step 2, As God provides money to manage, set aside any margin outside of your finish line into a separate bank account. Step 3, after 90 days, explore the many ways you can use that margin you've set aside to create joy, purpose, and impact in God's kingdom. Want to learn more? Check out our website at finishlinepledge.com. That's all we have for today. We'll see you next time.